Último día de FutureCom 2015 que se celebra en la ciudad de Sao Paulo. Empezamos un panel con uno de los temas novedosos del Congreso, no porque sea nuevo este año, pero sí porque se habla con más fuerza, es el del Internet de las Cosas, y contamos con dos panelistas que nos van a intentar ayudar a entender la situación del mercado IoT, no solo en América Latina, sino en todo el mundo. Gentlemen, welcome to telesemana.com. So, as you know, the panel is on IoT, and the idea is for us to understand a little bit better that market and how it is progressing. So I guess the first question for you guys is, what is the status of IoT? Where are we at this point? And what are the main challenges that the operators are facing to develop this ecosystem? If you want to start.
Sure, obrigado. Thank you for inviting me on the panel. Obviously, IoT, there's so much media. If you look at the media, there's a lot of IoT discussion that is happening. IoT itself, is it a reality or is it a myth? I think personally it is a reality. So look at how our lives have changed. You know, everybody has a Fitbit, you have a phone, you have other devices in the home which are all connected to network. So it is a reality now. Going forward, it becomes even more complex because there's going to be many devices thanks to the technology where you can embed intelligence into these devices, which is changing our lifestyles, how we use these devices. So now, what is the challenge for the service providers? In this ecosystem of IoT, how can service providers be more relevant? I personally believe there is a lot of relevant service providers can bring into the table with IoT. Number one is connectivity. All these devices are connecting somewhere into the cloud so that they can push the intelligence in the cloud and then pull in any information from the cloud. Essentially, that's what a thing does, IoT does, right? So in order to get to the cloud, you need connectivity. And where does the connectivity come from? Either from Wi-Fi, or if you are in public places, through wireless connections, or through any other connectivity mechanisms. And service providers are in the best situation to provide connectivity to these devices. But they can also add more value to the IoT ecosystem, not just by providing connectivity, but also providing security. All these devices are there to be attacked, because there is hackers out there who are trying to exploit these devices to do some kind of attacks. So service providers can add more security. And the last one where I think service providers can do much more in the IoT ecosystem is policy enforcement. Today, all of these devices are distributed. Everything has to be managed independently. For example, my Fitbit and then my home lock, they don't interoperate. So where service providers can provide a service is, hey, centrally you can manage rules, centrally you can manage policy for these devices. If we can provide a platform where I can go and centrally manage it through a service provider, that becomes a great value add. I think overall, just to summarize, security is a big concern. Connectivity is a big concern, and how do you manage all of these through policy is a big concern, and all of those can be provided through service provider as a value-added service.
Okay, what is your take on IoT from the Qualcomm perspective?
Yeah, so IoT has been a promise for a long time. It's nothing new, but haven't been able to go to market for a long time. And now I think we are on the verge of making really big impact using this technology. So we see even in our region, in Brazil, in Latin America, many projects that take benefit of the new technologies that many companies are bringing to the table to deploy IoT solutions and generate financial impact. And I think we have to think about a couple of aspects, since this is new, and we have to make sure that we plan for the long term. So for example, in some applications, for example, metering, smart metering of electricity, you have to think about equipment that's going to be in the field for 20 years. And those has implications first on the lifetime of the components, so they have to be there. If they fail, say in 15 years, you're going to still need equipment to replace them. But also on the network side, they have to make sure the network will still exist in 15 years to make sure that the devices will work. So that we have to guarantee that the provider is there, the technology is there. And we have a perspective, a view that cellular technologies are the largest platform in the world today, and are a very good fit for most of the IoT applications that exist.
Okay, now when I think about IoT, I always think about fragmentation. Like I could count, I don't remember the names, but probably 5 or 6 or even 7 organizations that are lovely industries on the IoT ecosystem, the one M2M, I don't remember the names, but there are like five, there are plenty. So always I'm thinking that, everybody's kind of doing whatever they can on their own, and we don't see kind of something like a standard or something that would make everything under the umbrella that we've seen usually on the operators domain with 3GPP, Etsy, and so on. Do you think that at this point we are highly fragmented, and at some point the industry would address this issue and try to have standards that will make things simpler for any device manufacturer to comply with a particular standard? So, as you were saying, sometimes things are not connected because perhaps they don't even know how to talk to each other because they use different protocols or different technologies or whatever. So do you think fragmentation is still a key issue for the IoT to actually really flourish?
So I can answer the first part, which is standardization of, let's say, connectivity. So there can be different kind of connectivities, and there's different technologies, Zigbee, Wi-Fi, etc. Is there a fragmentation there? And obviously there is fragmentation. And then is there a standard that is going to emerge? I don't think there's going to be one standard which will emerge, because for these devices they can be in different locations. And for some use cases, Bluetooth might be the right one. For use cases, Zigbee might be the right one. So I think they are using the standard connectivity methods, where the standards can be much more open. Is from a broader ecosystem, if they all move towards an IP-based technology instead of a proprietary technology. So if there is some kind of a device management and profile management that can happen through IP-based technologies, through APIs and all of these web technologies, then the innovation can be even much faster. Example, he has given some industrial examples, but I can give some consumer examples, right? My home automation system. Today I can only access my home automation system through the management system provided by that vendor. What if that is an open API and I can access through some other methods which I usually manage other devices? For example, a single management interface that can manage my home security system, my home locking system, as well as my internet connection from a single API. I think that is not there. I think the industry will eventually get there, where vendors can collaborate with IP-based technologies and open APIs. It becomes much more collaborative.
What do you think about the possible fragmentation that we could see on the market?
Yeah, fragmentation is a reality, and I think the answer to that is really the industry working together and creating groups and developing standards as an industry, not as individual companies. I think Qualcomm is privileged to be working in the cellular ecosystem for a long time, and as a result of Qualcomm efforts and many other player efforts, we have this big platform which has more than 7 billion terminals today, and more than the big numbers, it means low price. So I think what will make IoT really wins and become big is that large volumes will drive prices down, and standards are part of that. For the home automation, for example, and for sound, delivering sound to many devices, Qualcomm has helped form a consortium called AllJoyn.
That's one of the,
which is competing, and I think it's more than 50 companies are taking part on that consortium as well. And what you're trying to do is really to have one language, which is the common language among many vendors, so everyone wins. So it's not so much a matter of imposing your own vision or protocols or communication languages, but creating a shared one which makes everyone wins.
Shouldn't, I don't know, I'm deviating a little bit to the standards bodies, no? But because you are creating this, well, you have this organization, but I mentioned one M2M, there are others. Shouldn't groups like Etsy and 3GPP get involved in, or GSMA, in this type of mechanisms to assure, one, that there is a standard, and two, that actually the operators are at the center stage? Actually, our publication usually defends the interest of the operators, so that's why I'm trying to put the operators at the center, and I'm guessing that if Etsy, 3GPP and GSMA were involved with these mechanisms, obviously the operators would have a saying in terms of what needs to be done. But I don't know if this is another debate that you want to do some other time.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion on whom should be the one that leading this, but I believe that someone should be doing that.
Okay.
And you have so many verticals. I agree with you that sometimes you need one. So, for example, we are also part, for example, of an alliance called Continua that creates standards for healthcare. So, for sure, the standard for healthcare would not be the same as the standards for audio delivery. But it's important to be like multi companies, many people working together and building their standards.
Okay, let me then take again to the OTTs, because the OTTs can also, Google for example, there are companies that are trying also to enter the IoT domain, as they see also a value to provide services there. How do you see the competition between OTT providers and operators on the IoT domain? Do you envision something like we've seen with messaging and with voice, where the OTTs have been able to actually, gather those markets and make revenue with other services, not with those particularly. They use those to generate revenue some other way, but that is eating up the revenue of the operators, which is direct revenue from those services. I don't know if you envision any challenges there between these OTTs and the operators.
I definitely believe there's going to be a co-opetition in this market, because some of the application intelligence can reside anywhere. It doesn't have to be residing in provider premise. The reason I call it cooperation instead of competition is because there is connectivity involved here, right? Because in the messaging and other applications where we saw connectivity was involved, but it is more ubiquitous connectivity, where it is a standard connectivity everybody had. But in these cases, these devices can be sitting in home, industrial locations, it can be an enterprise, it can be anywhere, pretty much anywhere. And the connectivity, the first mile connectivity is only coming through the service provider or the enterprise.
Okay.
So that's where the difference is, where the enterprise or the service provider will know which device, who's using it, what is the policy I need to apply. And that's the level of security is needed, and that is only provided by service providers or enterprises.
So that's where the carrier grade component kicks in.
Exactly. That's where you need to assure the number one, the basic principle, the layer 0 connectivity, right? Okay. So that's what people call it.
Physical.
Exactly. And then provide security, right? From there on, where the co-opetition begins is now, where does the intelligence reside?
Okay.
For these devices, in all these connected devices, where does the intelligence reside? Does it reside in service provider premise, enterprise, or somewhere on an OTT? And that is where the industry dynamics will change, and we'll have
I'm assuming the real money is in there, right? Or not? Or you think it's also on the connectivity?
Connectivity is by default required, because more devices you add, more connectivity is needed, reliability is needed, security is a given. Right? So it's a chicken and egg problem. Without connectivity, you don't have value of, even if you have a beautiful application, you don't have a value of application. But you're right, the value comes from the user interface, what user sees, not the connectivity. The value comes from the intelligence, what user can grab. And that's where the market will be up for competition between service providers and OTT.
Do you agree with that vision, or you have something?
Yeah, I see many new companies tackling on analytics and how to transform all this amount of raw data into something which is minimal and can lead to action. But I think one of the keys to the widespread adoption of IoT is really what clients have been asking for a long time, which is reliability, especially over wireless connections. So for today, there are many applications that cannot be used over cellular or wireless in general, because they're not mission critical.
Okay.
And for example, on the automotive sector, like there's all this talk about the self-driving car, but you're gonna need something of some connection that works no matter what, right? Yeah. And this kind of reliability doesn't exist yet on the cellular. So we are seeing with very good eyes the evolution of 4G, like 5G technologies, which is focusing not so much on speed and throughput, which has been kind of the drive for the previous generations of cellular, but really on reliability. So it works 99.99% of the time. And then when you have this kind of connectivity, then you open up many more applications that today are kind of off limits to IoT.
Okay, yeah.
So that's a great point. For example, if my WhatsApp doesn't work, I'll try again. Yeah. If my car doesn't start,
you crash. Yeah.
So that's where the issues are. I think it's a good point.
Excellent. Just let me say something about Qualcomm, because I was at your booth and I saw that you were mentioning where the intelligence is, if it's on the operator side or in the cloud with OTT or whatever, or in the cloud of the operator of data center or whatever. But obviously you are also showing some stuff where you're saying that sometimes intelligence doesn't have to travel to the cloud, because you are providing this kind of intelligence within the device thanks to the new chipsets that are getting better and more powerful. I'm wondering if at some point many of the intelligence won't have to travel to the cloud, and you will be able to use, like, you know, your fridge will be able to connect with some of your devices at home, but they would not need to go anywhere in the cloud to, you know, to actually handle stuff for you. I don't know if you see that happening.
Yeah,
because that would also change a little bit.
We have this vision of the intelligence, given that the processing power of chipsets and the prices are coming down very fast. So intelligence of the network it's still going to be cloud-based, but it's going to be more on the edge of the cloud than in the center of the cloud.
Okay.
So, and that's driven by the computing power becoming exponentially cheaper and better and faster. So, for example, the self-driving cars, again, as an example, most of the processing, it's heavy image processing.
It's
going to be on the car, and you still need connectivity for some situations, but a lot of the processing is going to be on the car as well.
Does that, going to your point of the connectivity, does that mean, again, that we'll see even more value going from connectivity towards the edges of the network, where the OTTs probably can become even more powerful because of the applications they can build and so on?
So I can give you one example, right? I think you know, intelligence at the edge is required, and the edge, I define it as, you know, either provider edge or enterprise edge.
Okay.
Simple example, right? Because all these devices are intelligent, you know, as we just discussed.
And they're going to get more intelligent.
And they're going to get more intelligent. There's going to be software that gets on top of them, and you need to upgrade a software. You cannot do it centrally from one location, then you clog the network, and then you cannot do an upgrade based on each device. There's so many devices. So somewhere, you know, the edge has to have intelligence to automatically detect and pull in the information required for update, and then schedule it in the time which is not busy, right? And that intelligence will reside on the edge. That's a simple example.
Okay.
There can be other things which can be residing at the edge, but there can be certain intelligence that can go central, which is, you know, demographics information, the preferences, and which is where, you know, a lot of OTTs would try to get that data to market to them. But same data can be available to providers and enterprises if they are in the first edge, and then provide that intelligence application platforms for IoT devices. So that's where the cooperation will happen. Yes.
Excellent.
And to your point, I see a lot of value being created in aggregating data and generating intelligence. But there's a huge pipeline of innovation on how you communicate and how frequently you do it and how much data you can pass through. That opens up enormous opportunities for the chipset manufacturers and for everyone on the value chain.
All right. Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your vision on the IoT ecosystem. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.